Welcome back. This is Joseph with the My Cross, His Grace podcast radio. Over the last year, there has been 3 video episodes that I did that really got a lot of viewers. And I was looking at them just the other night, and I thought it'd be fun to do some outtakes and share them with our new subscribers. So sit back, enjoy, and let's watch these clips together. The first one is from Chapel Vales. It was March 2024, and it received over 94,000 views. Prior to 1962, women entering a Catholic Church were required to wear a head covering, typically a chapel veil. And when Vatican II changed the rules around, they did away with the requirement because clergy then believed that the requirement of women having to wear a veil was more a symbol of man's authority over women and decided against it. They discontinued its practice. That historical reference aside, the tradition was a beautiful one. It didn't mean or suggest that women were holier than anyone else or even subservient to men. Far from it. The biblical reference for it, though, was always this. It comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 10, where it says, "Therefore the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels." In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 4, it says, "Every man who has something on his head while praying or prophesying disgraces his head." And in verse 5, it says, "But every woman who has her head uncovered while praying or prophesying disgraces her head, for she is the one and the same as the woman whose head is shaved." What this tells us is that God has established lines of authority in order for His created world to run smoothly. This is not saying anything about lines of superiority at all. We each have our place. One sex is not better than the other. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, it says, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God." Verse 7 says, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of man." So that's the Bible reference. Why am I talking about it if Vatican II said, don't worry about it anymore? On this channel, we talk about praying, enjoying our faith more, and getting closer to God. If anyone in another, say, Christian denomination had a particular quirk or thing that goes on in their house of worship and would like us to talk about it, send it in and we'll do a piece on it. We'd very much like to do that. Now, for any woman interested in wearing a chapel veil, it's an elegant and time-honored statement of reverence and faith. Some women may fear that everybody's looking at me, and they're not. For any who do look your way, you will inspire in them a desire to do the same. It doesn't mean that you're any holier than anyone else, yet you are sacred in a holy way. Consider that in the church, there are many things veiled all of the time. The most sacred things are veiled. The Eucharist is veiled in the tabernacle. The chalice and paten are veiled at the beginning of every Mass. An altar cloth is considered a veil over the altar of sacrifice. You may simply call it an altar cloth. Women are likewise sacred. Consider that they are the only people who can hold 2 souls in the same body at the same time. The chapel veil is an honor for the woman to show love and reverence to God without even saying a word. Some women have shared that wearing the veil helps them to focus more during the service, focusing more on things before them than the distractions around them. Many women have and enjoy their own veils, and some churches have free ones at the back of the church closest to the main entrance for any woman to take for free who may have forgotten theirs or who didn't even know or think about having one or wanting one. And if that's the case, take one and enjoy wearing it. So to sum up a little bit, wearing a chapel veil is not at all required in most churches. It is, however, permitted, and it's a beautiful practice. I endorse it. Now, that brings me now for a moment to speak with the men. I don't think enough of us dress as much for the occasion of church as we should. In my opinion, slacks, not shorts, should be worn to church. Shoes, not sandals. Younger children who see the older folks, moms and dads, wearing Sunday clothes helps establish in them the thought that there's something special about today and church itself to get dressed up for. That's a good thing for families, church, and society. It also helps young men and women to get into a practice of dressing properly for an occasion, such as church, a wedding, a funeral, even a job interview. This church activity helps prepare young people for other events in life, where dressing properly is important. I know in vacation towns, churches are simply happy that someone shows up and does not say anything about attire. I get it. By extension, I want to introduce the thought that treating church better in your life and in the lives of the younger people helps life to treat you better by demonstrating maturity of thought and action. Dressing better for church shows respect. Employers like respect. A respectful employee in the workplace gets rewarded. To be clear, it's not overall a matter of dress as much as it is always a matter of your heart. Do you love God enough to show Him the respect He deserves? Some parents might think, well, this all sounds good, except we can't even afford food right now, let alone nicer clothes for the kids that are still growing. This is just a conversation. Your attendance is most important, and never stay away from church because you think you aren't worthy because of attire. Again, this is a simple conversation about showing and demonstrating other ways to show respect and reverence to God our Father. Now, men and women of any age may like saying the rosary before, during, or after Mass. Some just want to hold them. Some may enjoy reading from a personal missal or other prayer book as part of their devotion. Lighting a candle before or after Mass is another devotion that adds to the church life experience. And of course, the lighting of the candle is lit for a person, desire, or special intention. Now, usually there's a slot or a change box somewhere near the candle stand that you can slip in a few dollars in the box to help pay for the candle. And it's a collection for the church to use on other things that, like let's say more candles, right? So to finish up, if you observe a woman wearing a chapel veil, compliment her. That last episode was episode 43, but this next one, which is which Bible to use, was actually from February 2024, was episode 36, and it received 56,000 views. Enjoy. Share a thought related to a question that I got from a friend of mine, Kyle, at the seminary we both go to. And he had asked about the Apocrypha in the Bible, the Catholic Bible, and asking how important it was, or is it worth reading. It was eliminated from let's say Protestant Bibles, mainly because it wasn't divine inspiration enough. So it's 15 books that were added to the Bible, which make up the Catholic version of the Bible, and that was his question. So I responded to the question, I believe, by saying that anything having to do with Scripture is of value and important. We don't have to necessarily carry it around with us all the time, but at least know where it is and be able to refer to it for whatever reason we might want to, because we heard it in a biblical reference, a talk on theology, whatever possible reason there might be that it was referred to. I believe that when we look and hear different scientists and archaeologists finding anything to do with ancient times, a fossil, it's treated with such discovery and excitement. And I look at the Apocrypha pretty much like that. Those 15 books, while not as divinely inspired as all the other parts of the Bible, the Old and New Testament, they're an important piece of scriptural reference that we could at least refer to from time to time as needed. So I thank Kyle for the question that way, and it even caused me to think about the importance and relevance of it in our daily lives. Now, I'll take that question and extend it out a little further and say or suggest or put out there, is it something that even Catholics themselves are largely aware of? Do the majority of Catholics even walk around with a Catholic Bible? Most likely not, no. Is there a Catholic Bible available? Sure, but it may not be one that everyone is comfortable with. In fact, just for reference, there are over 3,030, I'll say it again, 3,030 versions of the Bible itself. And it's translated into over 2,011 different languages. And online, you can find over 1,900 versions of the Bible itself online. I couldn't even tell you how many Bibles I have, all different versions. And I kind of favor the King James Version myself. But people have large Bibles, small Bibles, New Testament only, large print. There's New Application Study Bibles, which are phenomenal in terms of helping people to understand the scripture that they just read. So the ideal Bible that anybody should have is the one that they're going to read, okay? The one that makes you comfortable, that you enjoy holding in your hands, and the print that you're not straining your eyes, that's the right size for your backpack, briefcase, home, desk, whatever. The Bible that works for you is the best one for you to move forward with. Is it fun to have different versions, different sizes and prints and things like that? Yes, and you'll choose them for various reasons. Your travel plans might not allow space in your suitcase or backpack for a large Bible if that's the one you typically walk around with. So use what works best for you for the purpose that you're thinking of taking it with you. But again, the one that you use the most, the one that you're most happy with, the one that you feel good having, holding, and reading, that's the Bible that works for you. That's the one you should continue using and enjoy it. Share with friends. If you happen to be reading one and you know a friend is doing the same thing in a Bible study, or maybe they're reading different things than you are, you could at least compare the versions, the language, and discuss that. How they're different and what you learned from the reading of it, and how maybe even to use those different versions to encourage somebody else in getting started in reading for themselves. So I hope that's a comfortable treatment of the different Bibles and things that they are. Until doing this broadcast, I was really uncertain of how many actual Bible versions there were. I knew there was a lot, but I had no idea it was over 3,030. And this last one comes from episode 3. It's entitled Prepping. It's in the Bible, and it received over 5,000 views. Enjoy this representation. So a tip on Bible reading itself for those who are not into it but want to be, would be to maybe start with the Gospels in the New Testament. Starting with John, for example, but there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John's a good one to start with. It's an easy read, and it's a beginning. Another way into it, and listen, there's no perfect way. Whatever works best for you is the method you should go with. But to suggest a few ideas, a few thoughts, another way would be, an increasingly popular item in the last few years, you don't hear much about it, but they make great gifts and they're out there, is those daily devotionals. You'll even find them in the grocery store on that inspirational book rack, in bookstores, at the airports, and that kind of thing. They come in various kinds. You go look at them. It's like a daily devotional, right? It's not a monthly planner per se, although you can get them that way. But it's got the year in there, the month, the day, and verses for that particular day. And it's a great way to read a few verses, to understand a few lines, have a spiritual moment, let's say before you get in your car and make that commute, or after you've arrived at the office. It's another way perhaps to start your day and to get into it. So consider that in your thinking. Did you ever hear of a guy named Boaz in the Bible? There's a fellow named Boaz. He was ruthless. But then he married Ruth and he wasn't ruthless anymore. So that's a biblical fact. You can find that in the book of Ruth, but maybe not the way I just said it, but it's in there. Okay? Another guy I want you to be aware of, I know you're aware of this, but I have to reference it. It'll make sense in a second. Joseph. Not me, but Joseph in the Bible, one of the Josephs in the Bible. The one who was from the 12 tribes of Israel, and his brothers were jealous of him. They sold him off, and he ended up in Egypt, and he became a favorite and a well-placed, high-ranking official, second to the Pharaoh in Egypt. Well, one of the things that Joseph was doing was he saved a fifth of every crop that he was raising and responsible for. He was saving food. He was saving grain, in effect, is food, for the famine that they were expecting to come. So in a matter of speaking, Joseph was the first prepper, or at least one that we can point to and say, okay, it's in the Bible. All right, why are we talking about that? Consider the day and age that we live. You see trouble in the world here and there and all these different things, and the feeling of the moment. And sometimes I've heard people say and wonder aloud, I wish I lived in a different time when a different relative or age was such that people didn't have to worry about the stuff that we worry about today. With the prices of gasoline getting as high as it is and expected to get higher. With the cost of food, it's hard to go into a grocery store and not drop $100. And for the money that you are paying, you're getting less for it. They're calling that shrinkflation. You're paying more for something that you enjoy, but there's less of it in the product, and you know you're being taken advantage of. And why is that happening? Maybe because there's less of it to go around, so they divide it up into smaller packages, but charge you more for it. You know, remember when people were looking for toilet paper? All right. Suppose you went into your grocery store and you were looking for something and you know where to go and it's not there. The shelves in that section are bare. Again, remember when people were looking for toilet paper? Okay, you know where your grocery store is. Where would you go if that particular store was closed for some reason or out of what you were looking for? What's the next nearest grocery store that you would go to? Think about that for a moment. Now think, what if the first and the second store did not have the things that you needed? Where would you go after that? There's not a lot of grocery stores everywhere or in every community. Usually there's only one or two within a reasonable driving distance, right? If you live in the cities, it might be even further to the next second or third place you might think to go to, all right? There's a hurricane coming, so people go out and they get stuff. All right, it's going to rain, it's going to snow, and people get stuff. I want you to start thinking about getting stuff and putting stuff aside for that time when you may not be able to get out to the store, or you recognize from news reports or something else that there's a panic in the store. There's some chaos going on. People are fighting each other in the aisles. We definitely don't want that to happen, but what if it did? How could you supply yourself? Most grocery stores in the United States only have about 3 days worth of product for you. If they're not resupplied every 3 days, it's not there. If there's increases in diesel fuel, or diesel fuel is harder to get for the trucks that would move product from one place to another, then the delivery's not going to come, and you're going to find shelves that are bare. I say that to suggest that be thinking about that, because everything is not as well oiled now as it once was. Not that it's broken and not working. It seems as though it's being engineered to slow down and cause you an inconvenience. However way it's happening, it's happening. And what that means for us is we have to be like Joseph and prepare, prepare. Prepare for the day when a shortage occurs. How do you do that? Keep something extra more in the closet. What's a good barometer of sorts to measure? What would be enough? 30-day supply, 60-day supply, ideally at a minimum as a goal, a 90-day supply of food and things, so you didn't have to go out to the store. You know, I remember many years ago, I can't think of the year, we had odd and even gas days. Well, it was during the Carter administration, when depending on how the last digit of your license plate was, the number, odd numbers was you could get gas on one day, even numbers you got gas on the day after, and that rotated as a way to limit the lines at the gas station. So in the food sense, be thinking about shortages that may come and prepare for that. How soon should you be thinking about doing that? Many yesterdays ago. It's a different world today, it's a different time, but at the same time, you got to take care of yourself and avoid those problems or conflicts that we might find in a grocery store, which we really haven't seen other than the toilet paper episode. It's funny to talk about and to reference from time to time, but genuinely speaking, we got to get serious about what's going on. We know that there's a lot of increased immigration over our north and southern borders, and with that being the case, there's demands on all the systems, all the stores, on goods and services. And so we're going to find, if we haven't already, that things that we're looking for will be harder to get, and if we do find them, they'll be more expensive to purchase. So use that as a barometer of sorts to think about what you would do in those circumstances. Now, you've heard me say in this piece that if you live in the city, these are things to consider and why. Don't take any increased comfort if you're not a person who lives in this city but lives further away, even in, let's say in a more remote area. So I don't got to worry about that. There's not many people up where I live, say. You can't take any comfort, because if you can live in that place away from the city, then you could be identified as somebody who has more goods to be able to sustain yourself there away from the stores. You see what I mean? So you got to be careful, but you also have to be wise, and you have to do as Joseph did, be willing and able to store stuff for a famine if it comes. Food is not only something that we need to survive, but it can be used as a weapon against you if there's not enough to go around. And we don't want to get to that. But I ask you to think about hard times. We're in hard times now. We don't want them to get harder, but we don't know if they will. And that goes to the planning, to the preparation thing. You hear the term preppers. Why do people prep? It's just forward thinking and planning for that rainy day, the storm. You've been listening to and watching the My Cross His Grace podcast radio. We'll see you next time. God bless.